Hey guys, I'm finally back from a much needed vacation, but still suffering from a cold, so apologies if I cough. My first guest post vacation is a fantastic cartoonist, Bosch Fawstin. How are you doing, sir?
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh,
Gadfather, right? Gadfather?
the Godfather, that's right. Uh,
No, you gave me an offer I couldn't refuse, so I had to take you up on it.
I wanted to just tell people a bit about some of your accomplishments for those who may not be familiar with your work. Uh, so you won the 2005 Will Eisner Comic Industry Award.
I was nominated for
Oh,
that and also for the most promising newcomer, Russ Manning. I was nominated for two awards that year.
gotcha. And it was, at least in the Eisner one, it was for talent deserving of wider recognition.
Yes,
And boy,
yes,
did you do the right things to get this greater recognition, as per your subsequent 2015 winning cartoon
right.
in the first annual Muhammad Art exhibit and contest. Maybe we could start there. Tell us a bit about
Well,
that.
about the contest itself and the winning.
Right, and then of course there
Yeah,
was
I
the
mean,
Garland.
exactly. I've been drawing Muhammad for years. I've been drawing him ever since I found out that you quote unquote can't draw Muhammad. I started to draw Muhammad after the Danish cartoonists were threatened with death. I said, "This is ridiculous. This is, it's intolerable. The fact that a cartoonist draw a cartoon and be threatened with death by it and even killed by it." So I started to draw him, and every time an attack happened, every time something happened, as an artist, I'm not a soldier, so I put my pen to paper and my brush to paper, and I start to draw. And I heard about this contest. It was on online. I think Breitbart was advertising it, some other websites, and I said, definitely, I'll take my chance here. I've been drawing him for years. I might have a little edge because of that. I've been drawing him in all different types of ways, and I'm sitting there and I'm drawing him. I drew him maybe 30 or 40 times before that, and I sat there. I was drawing him. I said, okay, what am I going to do? Something different now. So I'm drawing him, and I said, wait a minute. How about if I have him threaten me
Right.
that I can't draw him? And I said, yeah, I think that works because the reason why I draw him is because we're told that we can't. So I entered that in, and within a month or two, I think I won the People's Choice Award, which was great. I think voters online voted the best out of the 10 that they had. And then I was invited to go to the event in Garland, Texas, and I said, well, did I win? And they said, well, we can't tell you, but we'd like to have you there. I said, okay, I'll definitely be there. And you know going in that there could be trouble despite the security, despite everything, because Muslims are, they're on a warpath. They keep making new reasons why they're trying to kill us. The Quran tells them, kill the infidels where we find them, and that should be enough. But then they say, well, you can't do this, and then you can't draw Muhammad, and you can't do this. So whatever, it's always a new pretense. But I knew going in, so I was asked by the media as soon as I walked in, aren't you afraid? I said, well, with the security here, these guys usually go after soft targets. It might not happen, but the security's here just in case. And I go there, and I'm announced as the winner, and it was great. It was great to stand there with freedom fighters, Robert Spencer, Pamela Geller, Geert Wilders, and I was paid $2,500 extra than I thought I would be because they said if you win the People's Choice Award and the main award, you still only get 10,000. The People's Choice was supposed to be 2,500, so they put 12,500, which is great.
Now, was that
And
the event? Sorry to interrupt you. Was that the event where some, I guess, private citizens intercepted some guys who were coming from Arizona to cause mayhem at the Garland event? Correct?
yes, I mean this was basically and then every single few months we found out more details. We find out that there was an FBI agent at the event, unarmed, who was texting with the killers, with the would-be killers, and tell them details about the security. And to me it's infuriating because if they knew that these guys were coming for us, why didn't
What you said again?
yeah, basically, there was an FBI agent at the event. We found out, recently. There was some transcript of some court proceedings, and he was there, and he was texting with the killers
Wow.
about the details about the event and how many security guards, how many this, how many all the details. And it's to me, it's unbelievable because the fact is, our government knew these guys were coming for us. There was a few hundred people there, and if anything happened to us, you always find out after the fact of these attacks that our government knows the names of these guys. Why? Because they've been following them
Right.
for a number of years. And it's just, to me, it's sick because if they know these guys are up to no good, they have to find a way in a time of war to try to intercept these guys before they attack. So fortunately, the cop blew their heads off outside the building before they got in.
Which was, of
And
course, killing them killing them was
Yes.
Islamophobic because the right thing to
Yes.
do would have been to die
That's right.
honorably. In which
That's right.
case, right? So there you
That's
go.
right. And
So
plus, being a recovered Muslim, you know,
yeah, I want to talk
that
about that. Hold
sure.
off on that. But so
Yeah.
I just want to finish with the cartoon part, and then we'll get into your personal history. Of course, you may be familiar with this, but some of our viewers may not be. The name Molly Norris might
Yes.
ring a bell to some folks. She was the cartoonist who, in 2010, had, I think, drawn a cartoon of Muhammad,
She did.
and then had gone on Facebook and said, "Hey, we should have a, every day, everybody should draw a Muhammad Day." And then, of
Yes.
course, she didn't expect the type of response that she would receive, and then she had to go into hiding. This is in the United States. This is not in Yemen.
Yes.
This is not in Saudi Arabia. And I
Yep.
think she has been in hiding for now 4 or 5 years, correct?
Yes, she has. Yes, she has. And she was working for the Seattle Times, I believe. And I guess they let her go. And they said there was one quote that they had. It was pretty ominous. They said, Molly doesn't exist anymore. They literally said that. And she's the girl. And that's why in this past Everybody Draw Muhammad Day, I offered people, I said, look, if you can't draw, if you want to take part on this day, let me draw him for you. So I got a nice response to that. Dozens and dozens of people did that. So it's just a way to defy
So,
this. Sorry.
so in her case, she goes in hiding. In your case, you've been doing this openly, and we'll get into your personal history.
Yeah.
You're even a worse creature than she is,
Right.
because you are an apostate, and so
Right.
you're sort of the most hated, or maybe second after the Jews. And
Right.
so, do you face a lot of personal safety issues?
I do. I definitely do. My life has never been the same since Garland. I want to still live in freedom to an extent. I mean, to an extent, I want to live in freedom fully, but I can't as much as I used to. I can't go around to places as much as easily as I used to. I got to take certain precautions. I'm in contact with certain authorities in this country every so often when there's a threat. And this is the part of my life. This will probably be this way for the rest of my life because I don't intend to stop this. To me, this is a fight this is my way of fighting this war. This is my way of doing it, to defy the scumbags. They can't tell us what to draw, what not to draw, and especially in a time of war. And
Take it away. So you were saying about why you fight this fight?
well, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to allow the scumbags tell me what we can or can't draw. As a free people, as individuals, as a cartoonist, I mean, we are in the middle of a war here. I'm not a soldier. I'm a cartoonist, so this is the way I fight it. By telling the truth about Islam, by exposing my own background, why I do what I do, and by drawing Muhammad. It's a defiant act.
Well, I always tell people that there are a multitude of ways by which people can contribute to the battle of ideas, and I think your work demonstrates exactly that. That it's not just about the written word or the spoken word. It's also the fact that through images, right, caricatures, satire, humor, there are all sorts of ways that we can use these various scalpel, of the surgeon to cut
Yep.
through bad ideas. And so in that sense, your work is very important. Before
I
I go
appreciate
on to your personal history, of course, other cases, the Charlie Hebdo is an example of work similar to what you do.
Yep.
And I was astonished when, the stories, when that particular disaster happened, to see so many liberals coming out on the wrong side. Listen, they had it coming, right? I mean, here they are
Yes.
disrespecting people. It's just, and I see it even amongst my academic colleagues, right? So when
Right.
when your moral compass could be so broken, when your understanding of what true freedom of speech is so broken, that
Yes.
such an example where somebody comes in and slaughters, I don't know how many people there were, 15, 20,
13.
13.
I think 13. Yeah.
When you can't come on the right side of that issue, I mean, the task is a big one, isn't it, Bosch?
Yep. No, they are committed. They're committed to the immorality of the enemy, to their own ideas. They're committed against Western civilization. They are committed to it. They can't do that otherwise. You
Right.
can't come there and see 13 people slaughtered, innocent human beings, for making cartoons, and say, well, they had it coming. That's evil.
Now,
It is evil.
do you think that most of the Westerns? I mean, we know the motives that are compelling, the Islamists to do what they do. But how do you explain, in your view of things, why so many so-called Westerners? I say so-called because they don't really adhere to true Western values.
No,
Why are
no,
they
they're
so? Are they confused? Are they duplicitous? Are they in sync? Are they complicitous? What do you think is going on with these guys?
Well, I think their ideas, they're self-destructive ideas. I mean, they don't give a damn about themselves or their culture. And it's like they don't give a damn about themselves, and therefore, in the wider aspect, their own culture. They see it as something that is corrupt and evil, and everything outside of it is good and to be defended.
Right.
And it's just it's stupid. I mean, besides everything else, it's just plain stupidity on top of that.
Right. So let's now go, because a lot of people see you. You're a fair-skinned guy, so they might think that you're some Christian Iowan who supports Donald Trump and is a Nazi guy. So maybe you could tell us what your background is.
Well, when I left Islam, I mean, I was Arab, and then I left Islam. Then I turned into a redhead with light skin. It was only after I left Islam.
Right.
People tell me that. They say, "Oh, you weren't Muslim." I said, "Well, I actually was. I was raised to Albanian Muslim parents who came to America in the Bronx, New York, and I have blonde hair, blue-eyed, Muslim cousins. This is just the way it is. I mean, we are Europeans, and my parents were European. I was born here in the Bronx, and we were raised. But the problem I have, I mean, when people say about, well, you guys were moderate, I say, sure, moderate, but the Jew hatred, the misogyny, there was nothing moderate about it.
Tell me, let's talk about both.
Sure.
But as somebody, as you may know, as somebody who escaped Lebanon, we're Lebanese Jews under imminent threat of execution. My parents were subsequently kidnapped by Fatah. I'm only too familiar with the genocidal Jew hatred that's been going on for 1,400 years there.
Right.
But you, as somebody who grew up in that environment, tell us about Jew hatred and any other forms of hatred that you experienced.
And the thing is, first of all, it's like it was ambivalence about America. They loved it, they came here, but they hated it because it was quote unquote too free. Right. There was also that aspect, and people could do anything they want, But the Jew hatred, to me, it was just it's something that even for the moderate, that's what I call, even the moderate Muslims have immoderate Jew hatred, and even in America, even in a Western country, I mean, it's like in Albania, it's East, West. I mean, it's part. Turkey converted Albanians into Islam. It was 500 years ago. But what I'm saying is they still had their one foot in Europe, so they were a little more, I guess, relatively, a little more westernized. But that doesn't matter.
You can say the same thing for Bosnia, correct?
Right, exactly right.
Right.
So they come to America, they leave tyranny, and they bring all that crap here. The Jew hatred. The Jews were the scum of the earth. There was nothing worse. Pigs were considered filthy, disgusting. There was no pork meat in their house. Someone bought the wrong kind of bologna. They got their ass kicked. My cousins. And also this admiration for Adolf Hitler. That's something that I talk about. Other ex-Muslims don't really talk about that, whether they did, maybe they had it or not. I'm assuming they did. But it's something that, to me, being raised in America, it saved me from that entire idea, because you understand the history. You are among Jews, who were classmates and whatnot, and you realize these are good people. Some, not all of them are good. I mean, some people are bad, despite where they come from.
Natural variation of any population.
Yes.
There's good and bad in everything. Yes.
But to corner them as being bad because of their ideology, because of religion, that's just evil, and that's what we were taught.
Well, people. Sorry to interject. I'll ask you to continue in a second. People really don't appreciate the extent of how much Jew hatred becomes part of your identity, right?
Yes.
They think, no, it's just a few crazy extremists. Now, I grew up in the Middle East, and when I explain to people that Jew hatred permeates through everything. It's on TV, it's in stories, it's in the classroom. It explains natural calamities. It explains why the currency went up or down. It explains why you were rejected by this girl or not. It explains everything, right? And people have a hard time understanding this, because in the context of the West, we've reached a point where to exhibit such open hatred to another is something that in polite circles is not going to be tolerated. And so people genuinely have a hard time accepting or believing that such hatred could still exist.
Right. But also there's there's some of that happening now in the West where it's starting to get a little more acceptable.
Yeah.
To hate Israel, and not just Israel, but Jews in general.
Yes. And
to side with Muslims against Jews. So that's a scary, scary development, because it's like post 9/11, you would assume we've gotten a little more adamant against the evil of Islam and jihad, but we're getting a little more accepting of it.
Right.
A little, and it's becoming into. I mean, I go to malls sometimes, and there's women completely covered from head to toe, and it's more and more. And I see it. To me, it's as if in World War II there were women wearing these things with the swastikas on them, all over their bodies. That's what it is. It's a real aggressive way to tell you I am part of the ideology that is at war with civilization today.
Well,
I'm part.
And I discussed this recently on Dave Rubin's show, where
Yes.
I said, look, I mean, I drew an analogy. If I see a Hasidic man dressed in his attire, I mean, I think it's very silly, but I could
Right.
infer that based on his attire, his ideology is one that I can be assured with 100% certainty I should not be afraid of. By virtue
Right.
of him being Jewish and my
Right.
being Jewish, I'm okay. When you are exhibiting such commitment to an ideology called Islam in the way that you are when you're wearing the niqab or the chador or the
Yep.
burqa and so on, then I think every sane person would be entitled to say that based on statistical regularities,
Yes.
I can predict that you likely have Jew hatred in your heart.
Yes.
Now,
Absolutely right.
doesn't mean that every single person who's dressed that way has it, but again, we calculate statistical regularities. So with increased number of women walking around in burqas, I can
Yeah.
bet that it's not going to be as pretty for Jews. And only an idiot or somebody who is lobotomized would not recognize that link.
Right. And it's to me, it's stunning. Again, post 9/11, you would assume this would have been, blown back a little. It would have been less of this, but there's more of it, and there's more of a push to push the myth that Islam means peace. Technically speaking, it means submission, but it also means misogyny. It means Jew hatred. It means beheadings. It means murdering infidels. It means everything that is opposed to Western civilization.
Well,
That's
clearly
what
it must be because you're Albanian and you don't speak Arabic that you're
Right.
misinterpreting all
Right.
the
I've been
passages,
told that.
right?
I've been told.
It's
I've
got
heard
to be
it all.
that, right? Because
Of course, I'm ignorant. I mean, that's it. I'm some hick, right? I'm a white guy, a hick in America.
right.
I read the Quran. I only read the Quran. I mean, I was a quote unquote Muslim in name only in a lot of ways. When I was raised, we went to mosque once, twice a year, only for special occasions in Brooklyn. We were in the Bronx. We had to drive to Brooklyn for a particular mosque, and the proceedings were humorous because you go there. And I was a serious kid, and I guess I wanted to take it seriously. It's like, well, we're going here to this religious, thing, and we're supposed to, I guess, pray to Allah. We go there, and the imam is Arab, and he's speaking Arabic, Allah Akbar, doing the whole thing, and my cousins are farting in the middle of the thing.
Oh boy.
And at the time, I was really bugged by it, but I'm not bugged by it now because I'm glad that they were so irreverent about it. They didn't take it seriously, and they're not dangerous today. Most of those guys, I mean, I don't see them anymore, but on that level, I'm glad that they were that irreverent about something that's considered to be sacred in their lives.
So what was the thing for you? So you grew up in a Muslim household, you abide by many of the tenets of Islam. So what was the trigger, if any, or what was the
There was no
trajectory?
trigger. I basically phased out of it very slowly when I started thinking about truth, when I started thinking about morality. And I started thinking, this is not what I want. This is not what I need. This is not what I'm searching for. Absolutely not. Nothing that I've been taught, nothing that I've been raised with. This is nothing that I want for my life. So I phased out of it, and I was in limbo to an extent. I knew I was a good kid. I knew I loved truth. I mean, that's what really got me out of Islam, the love of truth. And then slowly but surely, I started reading books, and I found Ayn Rand's work, and I fell in love with it. And as I say, it's a pretty ironic thing. It's like I was raised with the ideology, the most misogynistic, Jew-hating ideology on earth created by men, and follow a philosophy now created by a woman of Jewish descent.
And of course, you love Barbara Streisand. So
Of course.
there you go. So how old were you when sort of in your head, if not openly to your family, you said, I'm out of this gig?
15, 16, my mid-teens.
And
That's
how
why
did, and how did your family
they didn't
react
like
to
it. They didn't like it. I mean, they always called me the red sheep of the family. They always called me that. I was the weird one. I was the artist.
Right.
So I didn't quite fit in anyway. So it was understood, but it was not liked because then it's like I am certifiably apart from the family, apart from the ideas, and they didn't take it well. But there was no beatings. They didn't kill me. In Islam, if you leave the religion, you are to be killed. So they're moderate in that sense.
Well, I recently spoke to a few months ago to a Palestinian gentleman. His name is Hazem Faraj, who converted out of Islam and became a Christian. At one point, he became a tele missionary or tele evangelist. I don't think he does that anymore. And he, at one point in our chat, said something to the effect of, well, my family loved me enough that they did not kill me.
Right.
So, imagine, and he said it. I don't think he was trying to be satirical or funny,
Right.
but it was quite a powerful sentence because, right?
Yes.
That demonstrates how much they love him. They didn't kill him.
Yes, and that's in some way how I feel. I mean, they were moderate. They're not going to kill me. They might frown. They might not like it. They might not see me anymore. They might not like me, but no, they're not going to kill me.
Well, that's what people don't understand about the positions that guys like you are in. Of course, you face safety risks, personal safety risks. You face personal costs because of things like what you just mentioned with your family. But of course, I assume also you must have faced professional costs. Are the various cartoon companies or comic companies open to a guy who is drawing Muhammad?
No, never. And I had a dream of writing and drawing the superheroes that I loved growing up: Captain America, Spider-Man, Batman, Daredevil, Hulk. All these great, all these great heroes that I loved growing up. And right now, it's not in the cards. It's not going to happen. Who knows? In the future, I don't know. But I have been in contact with these people. I've shown them my work. They like my work. The editor-in-chief of Marvel, art director of DC Comics a number of years ago. But my work, my first book was called Table for One. It took place in a restaurant. And it had some commentary about Islam and 9/11, but not too much to be completely written off. So they liked it. And they said, well, show us some more. So I did. Nothing came of it. I got, movie studios interested in it, TV studios, and also even with Pigman, the Infinite work, I got some people interested. But right now, it's not going to happen. I self-publish my work, not by choice. I have to. I sell it through Amazon. I sell it through Comixology. And I've since accepted it. I mean, it is what it is. I love the medium. I can't stand the business.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if you know this case, and even if you do it, I think some of our viewers might appreciate the story. A few years ago, Yale University Press, so, Yale, one of the most prestigious universities. Do you know where I'm going with this?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
So let me.
They printed the book without the what.
Right. So this was an academic who was writing a book about the, I think, 2006 Muhammad cartoon debacle. And so, the book is about the cartoons, right? So it's not even a question of, it's frivolous to include. The whole book is about those cartoons. They decided, Yale University Press, the bastion of liberty and freedom of expression, to not print those cartoons. Extraordinary.
It is, and for that reason is why when the news channels, the popular news channels in America, asked me to be on their shows after Garland, I said, okay. After a few times when they didn't show my cartoon, I said, well, listen, if you show my cartoon, I'll come on. If not, I won't. Well, we can't do that. I said, well, you're only contacting me because of my cartoon. You only know me because of my cartoon. You don't even know my name. Amazing. You know that I'm the cartoonist who won. So if you don't have me on with my cartoon, I'm not going to come on. So I lost a number of opportunities there also, but I think they lost because the fact is the only reason they have me on is because of cartoon. And the only one in the major networks who showed the cartoon was John Stossel on his on a free speech special on Fox News, which was great. So he showed it a number of times, but no one else would do it.
So how many? So in terms of numbers, how many of these guys refused to do it? Is it 5, 10, 20?
Yeah, 5, 6, 7. It was NBC, the CNN, and a number of the old channels. Sometimes the internet channels also they have, but they wrote back, oh no, we can't do that. I said, okay, well I can't be on.
Well, of course they will couch it under the fake sort of virtue signaling.
Respect.
It's respect. It's right. Of course, they don't. They
don't
mind.
Fear.
It's fear. It's pure. Yeah. It's pure Darwinian fear.
Unadulterated fear.
It's incredible.
Absolutely, they're cowards, and if they're going to cover this subject, show the cartoon, show the damn cartoon. It's not quote unquote offensive. There are cartoons sometimes, like in the I think Danish cartoons were 2005, but then they were the news story hit 2006 when an imams took those cartoons, brought them to the Middle East to try to start trouble. And they added a few more cartoons, which were not in the original, of a dog having sex with Muhammad, of Muhammad as a pig. They're trying to push this stuff. And for me, I don't make necessarily obscene cartoons. I don't care to have Muhammad having sex with his, with his 9-year-old wife. I don't care to have a pig having sex with Muhammad. People do that, fine, go do it. But that's not my style. And this cartoon was a very simple, direct response to being threatened with death for drawing a cartoon and to defend the free speech. You can't draw me. That's why I draw you. And to not show that is to really just to wipe out the entire point of the cartoon, or the point that they have me on their show.
Well,
It's just
here in Canada, the only guy at one point who defied sort of the collective cowardice of the West was a gentleman by the name of Ezra Levant. I don't know.
yes. Oh yes. I've been in
He's
contact.
okay, right. And so
Yeah.
he used to be part of a network called the Sun Network, which has now
Yes.
ceased to exist.
Yeah.
And the reasons could be construed as possibly nefarious.
Oh yeah.
And now he's got a new thing called the
Rebel.
Rebel Media, I think.
Yes.
But at the time, I think he was part of some news magazine out west in Calgary, I think, or Alberta, somewhere in Alberta. And he decided to print them,
That's
if
good.
I'm, and then he was summoned to a Canadian human rights,
Yep.
tribunal, where there is some bureaucrat who is asking him. I don't know if you've seen the
I've
actual
seen the
exchange.
video.
I mean, it is
Absolutely.
simply breathtaking, right?
It is.
Because here's this bureaucrat who's saying, "Well, what was your intent in doing this?" And his answer is, "I mean, why do I have to answer to you as to what my
Right.
intent?" So it's just extraordinary that in the 21st century, these are the types of debates that we're having, which we thought should have belonged in the Dark Ages.
Yeah, they should have been. And it's just, again, it's the cowardice, it's the fear, is the in a lot of ways the altruism, the otherism
Right.
of, well, otherism is good. Us not good, they're good, and also they're quote unquote brown.
Right.
You know, it's a brown philosophy. I mean, brown ideology, brown religion, and then you look at me and say, well, it's not. I mean, it's not. It's about ideology. It's about ideas. It's not about anything else. And this whole thing also about I don't know. If we go back for you, you might want to mention immigration.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We will.
Sure.
So what I wanted to talk about next is very, very briefly, because you mentioned the Jew hatred and you mentioned the misogyny. Now there's a thousand different ways that we can demonstrate very clearly that you don't fare too well as a woman in Islamic societies, and there's a multitude of ways that we can do that. But I'm not going to do that at this point. But what I wanted to point to is a Huffington Post article that was written, I don't remember exactly when, maybe this past May, a few months ago, by some young, confused woman who basically said that true feminism is, I mean, the manifestation of true feminism is Muslim women. And then she does the whole, Khadija thing, all the talking points that she probably learned in some proselytization dawah class, right?
Right.
And then I satirized it and I said, yes, this author, after she finished writing that article, her next article is beheaders are the true neurosurgeons.
That's right.
And
right.
And Hitler is the true lover of Jews. So I mean,
That's
how
right.
could it be that there could be a reality that is so clear as, it's not a good thing for a woman to grow up in Islamic societies. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that every single woman is mistreated, and it doesn't mean that there aren't tons of feminists who are Muslim. But I mean, the data couldn't be any clearer regarding the plight of women in the Middle East. And yet here you've got this smug, arrogant, naturally lobotomized idiot, Western young woman who is sort of talking down to Westerners that if you want true liberation of women, look to the Islamic world. How can you explain such lunacy?
I mean, you can't really. And it is lunacy. And that's why you can't explain it. It's just self-destructive. It is suicidal. It is against your own culture for another culture that you have no real idea about. This woman, she hasn't read the Quran. She hasn't been to probably Muslim countries. But she's committed to the idea that Islam, good.
Right.
Islam, good. No matter if it's bad, no matter if it's evil, it's good. And I'm going to promote it as such, no matter what I'm told, no matter what I know. And, even if she doesn't have to study the Quran, she knows enough. It's the most misogynistic ideology in history, without exaggeration, in history. And a part of her knows that, but she's fighting it. Because to accept that is to, say that we are better. And to say we're better, I mean, that's just racist.
Right.
That is evil. I mean, you can't say we're better. Well, the fact is, objectively, we are. This society, Western civilization, is incredibly morally superior to the Islamic society. It's not even, it's not even close. It's not even an argument. But they can't go there.
So what is it? What is it that, I mean, if if we can bottle your honesty, I mean, what is it that allows you, having grown up in Islamic household, being familiar with all things Islamic, to be able to arrive to your conclusions today, and yet so many others, now I'm talking about Muslims,
Right.
not being able? Is it a question of you found a way in your own personhood to break free of the brainwashing, whereas others don't have as strong a person? I mean, how do you explain the
I
different?
don't. I don't. I can't. I mean, I just again, I fell in love with truth. Truth for me was it was it. When you hear as a kid, truth, justice, the American way. I mean, again and again, Superman. It tends to stick with you. And truth for me, and it's interesting that truth is the first thing there. Truth, justice, the American way. But truth was so important to me, and that if you follow it, you're going to be sometimes lonely. You're going to have, and you're going to get in trouble, quote unquote. You become a troublemaker. Today the biggest troublemakers in the world today are truth tellers. Those who want to be, basically people want to kill you. I mean, literally kill you for telling the truth about certain things about Islam. As I say, if telling the truth about Islam, if telling the truth about something can get you killed, then that truth has to be told again and again and again and again and again until everyone tells it and it becomes common sense.
Well, and I mean, there are over 10,000 religions, and that's an underestimate. And yet there's only one that has to constantly remind us that it is a religion of peace, despite all of the evidence contrary to that, right? I mean, Buddhists are not walking around all day proving that they are peaceful, right? So that in itself.
What's a moderate Buddhist? What's an extremist Buddhist? What are they? Right. Why do you have to have those, qualifiers? Why? Because, also one thing when they say, well, Islam means peace, but we need to create a moderate Islam. I said, wait a minute. Moderate Islam, does that mean it's moderately peaceful? Is that what you want? Do you want something in those terms? Like, does it mean peace? And then what does moderate Islam mean? And also, as I call him, Daniel Pipe's dream. Daniel Pipes, basically he is fixated with this idea of moderate Islam. No matter what he has learned, no matter what he understands, no matter how many times he read the Quran, he is fixated on it. And that's why, in some ways, some of the people who study this subject, in some ways, they fall in love with their subject. And they start glorifying it, romanticizing it, and start talking about what it isn't, and what it could be. To hell with what it could be right now. We're very concerned with what it is.
Well, this is what I call... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we're very concerned with what it has been and what it is today. And we have to deal with it as it is today. And that's what we're not doing.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so you referred Daniel Pipes, but I could name many other folks that fall within the category that you're speaking of. And I put them all under...
Bernard Lewis also.
Bernard Lewis, maybe a bit less so, but...
yes, he had a little affinity for it at times, you could tell. And also his denial of Islamic Jew hatred.
Right.
That was a big tell, like, wait a minute, is this guy being paid off? What's going on here?
Well, so I was going to say that basically I refer to all these guys as proponents of unicorn Islam, right? And so here's where you basically impart your own fantasy into what Islam should be. So if I am a gay, a lesbian woman, then a Muslim woman who is a Muslim reformer, I will construct... That's exactly who I was thinking of, but I was trying to...
I'm sorry. And she also said Islam needs to return to its clever, fun-loving roots.
Yes, exactly.
And I had an exchange with her on Twitter for a little while. We went back and forth, and it was pretty interesting. It was after Garland and about cartoons and whatnot. So
she'll argue that, no, true Islam loves gays. Then you've got other people that I know very well. You could or could not say their names. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. Who are strong, unbelievably strong critics of Islam. But in their worldview... No, it's all a misunderstanding regarding Jew hatred, right?
They need to believe that. No, they need to believe that because if they're going to stick to Islam, if they're going to still identify themselves as Muslims, well, Islam can't be bad.
Exactly.
It can't be bad. Exactly. And therefore, someone has perverted. Historically, 1,000 years ago, there were some other people who... No.
Right.
They are deciding to be part of an evil ideology, and need to sugarcoat it and whitewash it for
Now,
themselves, for very personal reasons.
The next one I will name, since he hasn't been on my show, so I don't need to be quite as gracious to him, which basically says that the last example I gave is of someone who was on my show, is Zudi Jasser, right?
Yes,
Here's a guy who walks around, criticizing supposedly Islam, but then he concocts a manifestation of Islam that only exists in the deep fantasy of when he's taken a couple of hits of acid, right? I mean, it is so removed.
And that's why I refer to his Islam as Zudi Jasserism. It's a subjectivist view of his own, idea about what Islam is.
Right. And
personally, he might be a decent guy. I have no problem with him in terms of a threat-wise, but the problem with him is that he's lying to himself and therefore to others. And that's a real problem because he was talking he had a debate with Robert Spencer. And the bottom line was, at the end, he says, what am I supposed to tell my kids? And think about that. That's his main argument. It's like, what am I supposed to tell my kids? That's your problem. Right. Tell your kids that you are deciding to be part of an evil ideology, and you want them to be part of it also. But pretend that it's not evil.
Well, or do, if possible, but I don't think it's possible with Islam. So, for example, when people ask me, well, how could you be Jewish and you're an avowed atheist? And then I explain over and over again that, being Jewish is a multi-attribute phenomenon, one of which is the religious narrative. Cultural Judaism, right? I mean, you could be proud of our accomplishments, of our cuisine, of our humor, of our philosophy, of all sorts of things that makes
without being religious,
right? And therefore, I am part of a people's. And so Islamic societies have many, many things that they've done that they could be proud of. And so I can identify as a member and a lineage of those people, and hence I could call myself in that sense Muslim while rejecting all of the religious ideology. And that's how you could, and hence Ali Rizvi, whom you may or may not know, wrote a book called, he's a physician who was on my show, who has a book that I think is either recently out or is about to come out, called, I think, The Atheist Muslim. And I think that's the idea, right? I mean,
Right.
So I think it does a disservice to the greater dialogue to construct all these, BS versions of Islam. And I think based on what we're talking about, you probably will agree with me that all of those qualifiers, radical Islam, jihadism, extremist, violent, militant, whatever, these are all nonsense. There's only Islam. Yes. And that's as codified in the relevant holy books of Islam. And then different people will engage with those inerrant, and I say inerrant in the sense that they are unchanging, right? They are there, right? The Origin of Species by Darwin is not, there is an extremist version and there is a moderate version. Origin of Species is Origin of Species, and Islam is Islam. Now, I can engage with it such that I decide to ignore 95% of it. I'm a Jew who eats pork. That doesn't mean that I practice moderate Judaism where pork is allowed. It means that I ignore that kosher edict.
Yes.
Why is that so difficult to understand?
I don't know. I mean, a moderate Muslim's Quran has the same thing that an extremist Muslim's Quran has. That chapter, the verse of the sword, kill the infidels where you find them. The moderate Muslim, quote unquote, ignores that. The quote unquote extremist Muslim doesn't ignore it. But then also people say, well, there are peaceful passages, and you no doubt know about this. The early passages of the Quran, live and let live, and then later passages, kill them wherever you find them. And it's a doctrine of abrogation in Islam. You go with the later one. The later ones delete the earlier ones. So that's the problem also in terms of, I think you had Bill Warner also on about the dualism. Yes. And people can believe both, but they really can't, because once that doctrine is recognized, it's like, okay, you can pretend to believe it. But once the doctrine is recognized and pushed by Muslims, you got to say, well, those peaceful passages, they're long gone now. It's all out war for all time until all mankind submits to Allah.
And, incidentally, when Muslims will say that Islam is a religion of peace, there is a way by which you could interpret that statement as being true. And you may know it, but some of our viewers may not, so let me mention it. The argument is, you've got Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb, the house of war and the house of Islam. Until everybody is under the flag of the Dar al-Islam, we will not have peace, but eventually we will strive to have everybody under Islam, in which case the world will be at peace, and hence Islam does strive for peace.
That's right. That's the perverted, version of Islamic peace, where everyone is on their knees to Allah. Everyone is, is basically gave up all their individuality, all their life. They give up their soul, and that's why I call these extremist Muslims. They sell their soul not to the devil, but to Allah and to their religion, and that's why they can find themselves flying planes 500 miles per hour into buildings. And this idea also, people say, well, I really can't stand it. Islam is not a religion. It is a religion. You cannot fly a plane into a building unless you believe that you're going to fly right into paradise.
Exactly.
That's impossible. You cannot have an atheist communist doing that. And these true believers, not all Muslims will do this. And even out of the 19 hijackers, only 4 knew that they were going to fly the planes into buildings. The others thought it was a traditional hijacking. So even within that context, it's very hard for Muslims to find people to throw their lives away. Osama bin Laden would never do that. The other guy, but they found Muhammad Atta. They found these hardcore of the hardcore who actually believe in this stuff. And that's why it is a religion. It is ideology. And that's the problem with the West also. We keep covering for religion. When George Bush says Islam is peace, September 17th, I think, within a mosque flanked by members of CARE, which is shocking. The fool was there, not even understanding what he was doing, and said, Islam is peace. Americans got to realize that. Really? Do you know that? Have you studied the Quran? Within a week you studied it? BS. So he pushed this idea. He crippled our war effort. And to me, once that happened, you knew we weren't going to win this war in any time soon. And plus, he says, this war is going to take a long time. And he made sure it is taking a long time.
Well, so here's how, and you mentioned earlier immigration. So this is how we're going to ensure that there's going to be never-ending strife for the next several hundred years. And that's by, and I want to be as delicate as I can here. Look, I recognize, as somebody who escaped war, the value of having a humanitarian ethos to let people who are fleeing hatred and butchery and execution to come into the West. But I also recognize that not all people who are seeking to come to the West are likely to assimilate as well, and are as likely to contribute as well, as likely to not cause future strife. And so the example that I gave in several settings, both on my show and on other shows, is that if you look at a term that I call cultural homophily, how similar are cultures, right? When we mate with somebody, we're more likely to have a successful marriage if the person with whom we mate is one that shares our values, shares our beliefs, right? So if I am in Poland and I let in people from Estonia, on average, statistically speaking, there is likely to be greater likelihood of assimilation of Estonians into Polish society than there's going to be of Yemeni into Polish society. I mean, that's why cultures exist, because they are not all indistinguishable. They have different values, they have different belief systems, they have different attitudes to all sorts of things. So coming to the issue of immigration, so how do we deal with this problem? How do we balance our desire to be humane and let in people who truly just wish to live peacefully from the endless others who may not have those desires?
We have to understand, first of all, how to vet these people. And we sure as hell should not have any kind of mass immigration in the middle of a war by the Muslim world to the West. We can't have that. That's why 9/11, we should have stopped it cold. I said, okay, hold on a second here. What do we have here? We have 19 Muslims, 15 from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, from here, from all these countries. They represent those countries. And now we found out that the Saudi government was involved in 9/11 officially, and Iran was as well. So that's another problem. You got these state sponsors of jihad terrorism. So stop it cold for a time. Get it on an individual basis. Find out their particular story. See who they are directly. Have these potent questions that you can know, in a very good way that these people are not going to mean harm to us. But that's about it. Mass immigration, absolutely not. I mean, right now, the West is engaging in, the Western leaders are engaging in Muslim roulette against the West. They are absolutely bringing in those who want to kill us with those who are, quote unquote, refugees and whatnot. But they will absolutely guarantee more murders in the West because of it, and they don't care.
Well,
it's worth it.
And I was going to say that even what you're proposing, which I think Donald Trump is now proposing in a sort of...
I proposed it after 9/11, just to stop it cold, fresh, and start discussing these issues seriously, and then going to the point where we get in a very smaller way. And also the state sponsor of terrorism, maybe put those on the back burner for now. There's 10 tons of Muslim countries out there, the more quote unquote moderate ones. Find out the individual basis, who these people are and why they're leaving and why they want to come to America on that basis. But no mass immigration. Absolutely not. Why should we get 100,000, a million? Why should there be a million Muslims going into Germany? Why?
Right.
It doesn't serve Germany at all.
Well, I was going to say that the vetting. So now I think Donald Trump is proposing an ideological vetting process, which in my view is complete nonsense. Because first of all, it's terribly easy. I mean, it doesn't take an Einstein to know how to lie to any question that you pose me. Number one. But number two, even if somebody were to answer truthfully in a way that allows them to pass whatever vetting process, the fact that you could still engage with core Islamic doctrines while you call yourself Muslim, that means, well, no, and at any point, you can go from being the nice, sweet guy to not being the right. I mean, there aren't too many Vietnamese people who are radicalized by reading a Vietnamese cookbook, right? There aren't too many people who are radicalized by reading the latest Harry Potter series. And so therefore, it becomes very dangerous to let people in, even though most of them might be lovely, when you know that there's endless surveys that show that if you just ask people from all those countries, what do you think of Jews? What do you think of homosexuals? What do you think of women? What do you think of female genitalia?
They're not hesitant of saying that they're against it, yes. That they're against Jews, that they are for these evil things, yes.
Well, to the rate of 95 to 99%, right? So, for example, you've got Syrians coming in now, as a tsunami to Canada, right? So let's say, now the castrato-in-chief Trudeau has let in, I think, 25,000, but now he wants to accelerate. Well, if 90 to 95% of those Syrians are rabid Jew haters, do I have a right to be concerned about that, or am I Islamophobic, right? I don't.
That's what you're accused of.
Well, exactly. So, but then, I think that's the problem, is that it's almost an intractable problem. You can't solve it because on the one hand, you have to recognize that most of the people are not these rabbit killers. Most of these people want to come here to live peaceful lives. But the problem is, I can't know who's what and what is their future trajectory. So why?
That's why I call it Muslim roulette. We don't know. We don't know if that nice Muslim is going to flip one day. Maybe next week he starts reading the Quran, takes Islam seriously. Once a Muslim takes Islam seriously, watch out.
Right.
Watch out. You got to get out of the way.
So then what's your, if you are right now holding the reins of all the relevant power, what do? You stop immigration until you find
I do stop a cold, and I start explaining why I'm doing that and why this is a world war. We were not bringing in Germans and Italians and Japanese by the masses in the country during World War II. We would never have done that. It would have been stupid, illogical. So stop it cold. Stop it cold, and then figure out a way. There are cases in the Muslim world, whether they're, apostates, whether they're Jews, Christians, maybe they're decent Muslims who are BS Muslims like we know in the West, and they have their particular cases sometimes. We can maybe check those out on an individual basis here and there, but nothing mass at all, especially in a time of war.
Well, I think
once you wipe out jihad, then it's a different story. We'll see.
Well, I was going to say that I think, one of the ways to, a sane immigration policy, first of all, has to ask the question of how do prospective immigrants serve our country, right?
Yes.
So, for example,
how did it benefit us?
Well, exactly. So if you're saying you are bringing in huge investments, so that would be sort of an economic argument. We need tons of new physicians and neurosurgeons, and there are tons that we can get from a particular country. Boom, let's go get them. So there are ways that we can bring people in. While always maintaining the question of how do prospective immigrants contribute in a positive way to our societies. The problem is that right now, everything is viewed through the lens of infinite virtue signaling, right? Yes. That's the end all, right? The only way that I make any decision regarding immigration is to basically say, everyone coming out of Syria and Yemen are lovely folks because, of course, they have a skin color that's darker than most people, and therefore they must be good, since we know that skin color is what determines whether you're nice or not, and therefore that's what we're going to do. We're going to virtue signal our way into oblivion. Uh,
Yes.
and now,
And
do you
and,
see
and
any?
a guy like Trudeau and Obama, they feel good also when they do this. They
Right,
feel good. It's very subjective. They feel good about it, and that's what's important. That
right.
they feel good about it. It's despicable.
So do you see, I mean, I know in Europe now we're starting to see a backlash, whether it be through the political
Yes.
process, but even on the streets, things are getting a bit more heated. I mean,
Yes.
how do you see the trajectory of this thing playing out? I know you can't predict, you don't have a crystal ball, but what's your best guesstimate as to how this is going to play out?
I think war in the streets to some extent. I think war in the streets, and I also think that these suicidal Western leaders have to be ousted eventually. They have to be for our survival. They have to be. They're not just self-destruct. I mean, they're not self-destructive in the sense where they're the only ones who are really, really safe. They're not bringing in these refugees into their homes.
Right.
These refugees are raping women, and across in Germany, they're beheading people. They're killing 100 and what was it recently? The horrific attack in Paris, in Nice.
In
What
Nice,
was it?
I think close to 100, maybe 80
I
something.
mean, it's just it's unbelievable
Well,
the
it must,
extent.
but that's not due to Islam. It's due to mental instability and
Yeah, and
lone,
also busism. Busism. It was a bus, right? Or a
it was
truck.
right,
Truckism.
busism and also lone wolfism.
Yes,
Eh,
and also these lone wolves. There's a lot of lone wolves.
yeah.
Lone wolves. It's like I thought it was lone wolf. I thought it was an individual thing. What's with the lone wolves killing us?
Plus, the lone wolves never seem to be coming from the Seventh Adventist camp.
That's right.
Uh,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
so
They come from Islam.
I've actually argued that look, we face one of two possibilities. We either solve the problem today in as humane and as peaceful and reasoned possible way that we can, or we wait until tomorrow where the problem will be solved, but it will be a lot more bloody. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
a lot of people are sort of starting to recognize that there's really no way around it, right? I mean, people at one point are going to wake up. I mean, I often talk about the castrati brigade, the fact that most Western men are castrated, but the
Yes, they are.
reality is that there is enough men who are not castrated who are going to wake up one day and are going to say, this is not really working for me. And when
Yep.
that day happens, we're going to have a repeat of Beirut, Lebanon, the land
Right.
that I escaped, on every street corner.
Yes.
So why not be honest? Why not be proper? Why
You know
not?
what? You know why? Because they're not honest. They're fundamentally dishonest. Fundamentally dishonest. They are committed to dishonesty, committed to lies. I mean, that's one thing. It's like PC in a lot of ways. PC is like liars organizing their war on truth in a lot of ways, and they're all part of it. Obama's part of it. Trudeau, Western leaders across the board. They are committed to lies that make them feel good.
But
I think that's reality.
do you think that? I mean, I know you can't sort of read what's in their heart, but do you think it's because they are genuinely complicitous and duplicitous and in bed with those nasty
Some
folks?
are.
Oh, see,
Some are.
my thinking is I have a slightly more charitable position. I think that they've been infected with very bad Western ideas, like political correctness, like
Yeah.
postmodernism, like cultural relativism. So there's sort of a tsunami of parasitic ideas that has, well, parasitized their brains so that they could no longer reason about profoundly trivial truths in a clear and reasoned manner. And so that, if you like, is a more charitable position because it basically says that Trudeau and Obama are not in bed with the Islamists. Rather, their brains have been so parasitized that they don't it's like, I don't know if you know the example, I've discussed it on one of my Saad truths, of the spider wasp, right? There's a spider wasp that's much smaller than the spider that it parasitizes. It stings it. When it stings it, it takes the spider into its burrow. The spider is still alive. It is still in vivo, and the wasp will lay its offspring on it, and then they will eat it while it is still alive. And I argue that the political correctness meme is exactly like the sting of that spider, right? It is parasitizing us into walking to the dark abyss. What do you think of
Right.
that analysis?
Yes, but the problem is they're bringing us there, not themselves. They'll be protected for the rest of their lives. Obama will have the Secret Service for until he dies. Trudeau will. all these Western leaders, they are untouchable. Merkel will be protected from all of the consequences of her policies. That's the major problem. And also, it's evil in a sense where I'm not going to be charitable because the fact is their main job is to make sure we are protected. Right. Whatever else they do, whatever else they want to do, that's their singular purpose. That's why they exist. That's why they get voted in. Protect us from threats, from crime, whatnot, and then whatever they want to do, they're not doing that. They're not doing their job. So that's just, to me, it's fundamental dishonesty, and it's a betrayal. It's a betrayal of Western civilization, of their job. So I'm not that generous about it.
As we wrap this up, as I tell all my guests, because they're all fascinating, we could keep talking for hours. Are there any projects that you are currently working on that are not yet for public consumption that you'd like to maybe promote or talk about before we wrap this up?
Yeah. Well, there's a project I'm working on, but it can't be announced, and it's a little frustrating. It's been a few years, but my current work is The Infidel featuring Pigmen. It's my post 9/11 story where I have twin brothers in there who represent me. They're redhead, Albanian Muslim background, and it's me as if I split myself in two. It's me if I went back to Islam, full throttle, and me if I oppose it, which is what I am. And it's two brothers, and then there's a story within a story. One of the brothers becomes a cartoonist who creates a superhero called Pigman, who wears pigskin leather and ruthlessly fights jihad. And the other brother has to take care of his brother in the Islamic sense. He has to take care of him. He has to try to, persuade him to stop it. And as the story goes, there are other methods that he tries to stop him. I don't want to say exactly where that goes, but you can imagine. Right. So it's something that post 9/11, I knew I would respond to this jihad with my work. And I thought about Captain America. And then, of course, within it, I said Marvel would never allow me to do that, ever. And they wouldn't do that. So I'm self-publishing this story. It's available on Amazon, Kindle. It's a digital comic book. It has 3 issues out right now. And we'll see what the next one is. It's a tough thing to do because of work and whatnot, but it's something that I think people would really enjoy and appreciate because it takes on political correctness, takes on the jihad, it takes on every aspect of the war, every front. And it's something that I'm passionate about, that I love working on. And Pigman is just, to me, he's the answer, in a superhero sense, to the jihad. Pigskin leather, ex-Muslim, big guy, ruthless, understands their language literally, Arabic, he's Farsi, all these languages, he understands them. He's a PhD, he's a philosopher. And
you've basically just described me. I am Pigman, basically. Muscular, speaks Arabic, very good looking, big. Stop lying to the people. Pigman is based on me.
And he's a big guy with a big gut. Unlike superheroes, he doesn't have a six-pack.
Are you fat shaming me right now? Is that what you're doing? You're fat shaming on my.
Look, you know what? There was actually an action figure maker who wanted to make a Pigman action figure. I said, absolutely. So he gave me a model. I said, well, he needs a gut. Well, no, we can't do that. I said, well, Pigman is unlike all. He's a little he's a little older than most superheroes. He didn't intend to be a superhero. He was writing against jihad for years. And then 9/11 happens. He sees the horror in his face and says, you know what? He heard Bush's speech. He goes, I have to do something personal. So he tries to get in as much shape as he can, but he still has that gut. And it's a funny little thing in there. He looks like he's a big guy. He looks like an old, like a 1950s cop in New York, a big guy with a gut, Right. And it's fun. So yeah, he's Arab, American, mixed. He understands the language. And he fights it ruthlessly, and that's why his main villain, who is called Super Jihad, says that he knew that this guy Pigman, that he was something in his background. He had to be Muslim because he's so ruthless. He fights like an inverted jihad against jihad, and he honored him by saying that. Like it was a compliment from his perspective. So it's a fun series. If you want to see something that nobody is doing out there, and I mean nobody, check it out, because right now, Marvel and DC Comics, they're promoting and publishing Muslim superheroes.
Right. Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, these Muslim superheroes are not fighting jihad. They will never fight jihad. They're just there to promote Islam, to promote Islamist peace. And it's not just Marvel and DC. Disney owns Marvel. Warner Brothers owns DC. So it's even bigger and worse than you would think. So that, to me, this is the way I'm fighting it as a one-man cartoonist. And check it out.
Well, keep speaking the truth in your unique way. And when you're ready to promote or announce your next project, which you're not able to speak about, we'll have you back on the show and we'll continue the discussion. Stay on the line. I will be posting several links for people who want to sort of engage with some of your work. Bosch, unbelievable pleasure. Thank you so much. You're
thank you so much.
True hero. Stay on the line. Cheers.